There is in this country no dominant ruling class of citizens. Justice John Marshall Harlan. Brown v. Board of Education was a Supreme Court case in 1954 that ruled segregation of public schools unconstitutional. This case started when the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, founded by Thurgood Marshall, handled 5 separate cases concerning the topic of segregation in schools that lost in lower courts. These cases were then appealed to the Supreme Court, forming the Brown v. Board of Education case. This decision overruled the Plessy v. Ferguson case, which had previously ruled that segregation was allowed as long as the facilities for all races were equal. The Brown v. Board of Education case was both a right and responsibility in history because it gave black children the right to go to public school, and it gave white citizens the responsibility to let the black children attend school, and it was a pivotal step towards equality for all people. This case granted children of color the right to go to any public school because it was unconstitutional for them not to get an equal education. In this case, Thurgood Marshall argues that the segregation of schools violates Section 1 of the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Bill of Rights, which states that no state shall deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. He argued that the racial segregation violates the 14th Amendment and that the separation of schools was inherently not equal. He also proved that the segregation of schools had a detrimental effect on children of color. While the Brown v. Board of Education case concluded that the segregation of schools was unconstitutional, in the perspective of some Southern governors, the decision of the Supreme Court was unconstitutional and it took away the rights of the state. In a letter to President Eisenhower from Louisiana State Governor Robert Kennan, he writes, "The controlling consideration is not of money or even segregation. It is of preserving our dual system of federal and state government. I trust that the guiding principle of states' rights, local self-government, and community responsibility will be given the prime consideration it deserves." In this letter, Kennan argues that any decisions regarding public school education is the responsibility of the states, not the federal government. He says that the decision of the Supreme Court to desegregate schools was unconstitutional and took away the rights of the states. While it is the right of the states to control the education system, the federal government was able to integrate the schools because segregation went against the Equal Protection Clause, and it was their responsibility to ensure that all citizens were equally protected by the Bill of Rights. The Supreme Court ruling to end segregation in public schooling granted children of color the newfound right to get a proper education. Furthermore, it was the responsibility of white students and political leaders to allow black children to attend school. However, this responsibility was frequently ignored. For example, according to segregation.egi.org, in 1966, when 450 black students enrolled in Greenwich, Mississippi public schools following a court order to desegregate, local white leaders threatened to fire or evict black parents who allowed their children to participate, and 200 black students withdrew. The students that did show up were beaten by a white mob with clubs and chains. This shows that despite their legal obligation and responsibility to allow the black students to get a proper public school education, they still resisted it and did everything in their power to prevent them from attending. They wanted to resist the decisions of the courts and even went as far as to break the law to do so. The final decision of the case faced resistance from not only students and local leaders, but it also faced resistance from members of Congress. The Southern Declaration on Integration was signed by almost all of the Southern Congressional Delegation, which had 96 members, and it said, "We pledge ourselves to use all lawful means to bring about a reversal of this decision." It was the responsibility of the members of Congress to obey the court's decision because without their support, the integration of schools would be difficult to enforce. It shows the massive amounts of resistance the students of color face when trying to attend public school and the vast number of people who did not accept the responsibility to follow the laws. The final decision of the federal government to integrate schools came with the responsibility of white Americans to accept the black students and allow them to get a proper education. Finally, the Brown v. Board of Education case was a very significant part of American history because it changed the lives of millions of black citizens and paved the way for many more civil rights acts. According to IDRA.org, black students experienced a 30% increase in graduation rates and a 22% decrease in poverty rates. These statistics show how the decision affected the lives of many African American citizens and how it affected them throughout their lives. This can be related to the Equal Protection Clause, which guarantees equal protection to all citizens, and without all citizens getting a proper education and equal opportunities, this right cannot be granted. Without this case, recent black business leaders and politicians would not have received a proper education that allowed them to get so far in life, possibly changing what America looks like today. The decision to desegregate schools also paved the way for many more civil rights movements, as shown in learningforjustice.org, where it says, Brown's legacy extends to gender. Title IV of the Educational Amendments of 1972 is passed, prohibiting sex discrimination in any educational program that receives federal financial assistance. This shows how the Supreme Court ruling did not only lead to more equality based off race, but it also helped put an end to discrimination in schools based off of gender. Without this decision, public schools may have had very different policies regarding discrimination and segregation. This case was a major part of American history because it changed the lives of African American citizens forever, and it led the way towards equality for all people. To conclude, the Brown v. Board of Education case of 1954 gave people of color a fundamental freedom that expanded into many more opportunities for change. The case gave black children the life-changing right to attend any public school. This decision also gave white citizens the legal responsibility to allow children of color to attend public school, which was not always fulfilled. It was also a major piece of American history because it led to many more opportunities for not only African Americans, but for many other minorities that were discriminated against as well. The Brown v. Board of Education case was a pivotal event in American history, and it changed the lives of millions in profound ways.